Well, the COVID vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11 could become available as soon as next week. But a new poll reveals that less than a third of parents with kids between those ages plan to get them vaccinated as soon as they are eligible. 76% of parents say that they are concerned about the long-term side effects. And not included in these poll numbers, another group of worried parents, those with infants through the age of 4. Here to give us a look ahead is Dr. Jayne Morgan. She is the COVID Task Force Executive Director at Piedmont Healthcare. Dr. Morgan, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
You know, I believe that there is this misconception out there that COVID doesn't really affect children, but so far we know that 700 children have died in the U.S. from COVID. So tell me how COVID affects kids under the age of 5. What do the statistics show?
Certainly, COVID affects children, and we see, although it affects them to a lesser degree, it does impact them. And we have this multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which is quite lethal in many children, where they have a shutdown of many organ systems. And although it's rare, it's very tragic if it were to happen. We also know that children, certainly toddlers and babies, are a big reservoir for spreading the infection should they become infected. And that is probably just because of the close contact that is required and the ongoing care of these children with other members of the household.
So we're gearing up for this rollout that's going to happen next week for those under the age of 12. What does the timeline look like when it comes to babies and toddlers? When can we see a vaccine approved for this age group?
So when we're looking at the current timeline of the Pfizer vaccine for those ages 5 to 11, we are looking at that probably before Thanksgiving and maybe even within the next week or two. The next will be that next age group of 0 to 4-year-olds. And we have infants as young as 6 months that have been enrolled into these trials. We'll have over 4,000 children enrolled in these trials, in the Pfizer trial. We're waiting for that data to come out, but probably not before the end of the year will we see this information on babies.
You know, when babies are born, they're immediately given like 12 shots, for example. Do you think the COVID vaccine will be added to that list of shots?
So I'm not sure if COVID will be added to that. It's going to determine to what level of endemic state COVID reaches and what will be the risk to the human population and the background prevalence of this disease in our area. All of those things will come to play. And so I think as we begin to look at that, the American Academy of Pediatrics will certainly start to look at what those vaccines are. But for now, I don't think we should anticipate that they'll be a part of that newborn regimen.
I'd love for you to address vaccine hesitancy this morning, because I know that I think the statistics show, the CDC says only 18% of pregnant women are getting vaccinated, and then we see the vaccine hesitancy as well with children under the age of 12, the parents saying that they aren't going to vaccinate their kids as soon as they're eligible. What do you make of the vaccine hesitancy, and especially when it comes to immunizing newborns and toddlers, which would be the next age group to get vaccinated?
Certainly, much of this vaccine hesitancy in this fourth surge that we are just turning the corner has been driven by misinformation and purposeful and intentional misinformation, and some of it just somewhat unintentional. But this misinformation and the ability of people to go onto social media and have a thought and click on something to get information, and then these algorithms continue to feed people that misinformation and then connects them with other people who are also believing the same things, and it continues to reinforce that initial incorrect premise. And so that's what we're constantly trying to combat as scientists. And this fourth surge not only was a surge of the Delta variant, but was a surge in combating this misinformation. I think when we look at toddlers and we look at children and we look at the age group as well, from 0 to 4 to 5 to 11, and who's going to get these shots, we certainly want parents to remember that children can be sick, and although it's rare, children can die. But most importantly, we have got to have some accountability for the mental health of children. We have seen regression in mental health, emotional regression, an increase in anxiety, a decrease in the ability to really socialize and use language as opposed to text and have real human interactions. And what the long-term toll of that is going to be has yet to be written when we're on the other side of COVID. But these vaccines help children to return to a normal socialization life in school and outside of school, and that is going to be paramount.
Yeah, important things to remember there. Dr. Jayne Morgan with Piedmont Healthcare. We do appreciate you joining us here on Morning Rush. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.